That night, New York's rain didn't fall. It punished. A cold, merciless storm slicing through alleys and broken dreams. And in the middle of it, a man who once owned the sky. Now walking barefoot through the mud, he was worth $50 billion. But tonight, he looked like a man worth less than zero. His name was Alfred Stone, the ghost billionaire, the unseen king who built empires no one could touch. But power is a funny thing. The higher you rise, the smaller your soul becomes. And tonight, his was about to break. A flash of lightning, a door, gold letters on black glass. The Gilded Scepter, the most expensive restaurant in New York. A place that cost more to dine in than most people made in a month. A place he secretly owned. He pushed open the door. The warmth inside hit like betrayal. Laughter, crystal glasses, perfume thick as smoke. No one looked up. Except one woman. Her name was Sophia Jenkins, a waitress. Young, exhausted, holding her tray like a shield. She saw the man, shivering, drenched, eyes hollow but proud. Something about him felt different. He didn't beg. He didn't explain. He just stood there, soaked to the bone, silent, like a fallen monument. "Sir?" she asked softly. "Can I help you?" Before he could answer, a voice sliced through the air. "Jenkins, step away from the door." The head waiter, Charles, swaggered over, a man who confused cruelty for class. He gave Alfred one look and sneered. "This establishment," he said loudly, "doesn't serve people like that." Sophia froze. "He's just cold." Charles cut her off. "And you're just a waitress." "Stay in your place," the old man said nothing. He simply bowed his head, the faintest sigh escaping his lips. That sigh. It was years of loneliness in one breath. Sophia clenched her jaw. He asked for nothing. "I'll bring him tea," Charles laughed. "Then you can drink it with him because you're fired." Every guest turned. Some laughed. Others whispered. But Sophia didn't flinch. She walked past Charles, pulled out a chair near the window, and said quietly, "Please, sir, sit." For the first time, the old man smiled. Not with his mouth, with his eyes. She brought him a cup of black tea. The steam rose like smoke from a battlefield. He held the cup carefully, his hands trembling. "Why did you help me?" he asked. Sophia hesitated. "Because nobody else would." He studied her face. Sincere, tired, kind. A rare combination. "Do you believe in fate?" he asked. "I believe in decency," she replied. He smiled faintly. "That's rarer than fate." Then Charles returned, angrier than before. He slapped the cup from Alfred's hand, hot tea spilling over the table. "That's it?" "Security," he barked. 2 guards moved in. Sophia stepped between them. "Don't you dare," Charles shoved her shoulder. "Move, girl." And that's when the room froze. A voice came from behind them, calm, but so powerful it cut the air in half. "Is this how we treat guests now?" Everyone turned. Standing by the bar was a tall man in a black suit. The restaurant's regional director, Mr. Peterson, his eyes locked on the soaked stranger. "Sir, forgive them," he said quietly. "They didn't recognize you," Charles blinked. "Recognize who?" The stranger stood slowly, removed his coat, straightened his spine, and with that single movement, the entire restaurant changed. The beggar was gone. In his place stood Alfred Stone, founder and owner of the Gilded Scepter Group. Every waiter froze. The pianist stopped playing. Someone dropped a glass. Charles stammered, "Mr. Stone, I didn't know." "That's right," Alfred said coldly. "You didn't know. Because you didn't see," he took a step forward. "When you thought I was poor, you threw me out. When you thought I was rich, you started trembling." He looked around the golden room, disgusted. "You worship the wealthy. You spit on the broken. You call it class. I call it rot." His voice grew sharper. "This restaurant was built to honor people who worked hard, not mock those who've fallen." He turned to Peterson. "Fire him!" "Immediately, sir," Peterson said. Charles collapsed. "Please, Mr. Stone, I have a family." Alfred's gaze didn't soften. "I had one too," he said quietly. "And I lost it when I stopped treating people like humans." Guards escorted Charles out. The door shut behind him with a dull echo. The silence that followed was suffocating. Everyone watched as Alfred turned toward Sophia. "You were fired," he said. Sophia straightened, heart pounding. "Yes, sir." He paused, then smiled faintly. "Then I'm rehiring you," Sophia blinked. "What?" "In fact," he said, "I'm promoting you." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Alfred motioned to the door. "Walk with me." Outside, the rain had stopped, but the world still smelled of thunder. A black Maybach rolled up to the curb. Peterson opened the door, waiting. "Where are we going?" Sophia asked nervously. Alfred's voice softened. "To see what kindness looks like when it's given a chance." As she stepped into the car beside him, the city lights reflected in the window. Bright, distant, unreal. Neither of them knew it yet. But that one act of decency, that single cup of tea, was about to rebuild an empire and save two souls that had both forgotten what it meant to feel human. The car sliced through Manhattan's wet streets like a ghost gliding past its own reflection. Sophia sat in silence, her uniform damp, her heart still racing. She could smell faint traces of the rain, the leather seats, and the faintest hint of Alfred Stone's cologne, understated, old world, something that didn't beg to be noticed, but refused to be forgotten. For a moment, she wondered if she'd imagined everything. Just an hour ago, she was a waitress fighting to keep her job. Now she was sitting beside one of the richest men on earth. Alfred didn't speak. His gaze was fixed on the dark skyline, eyes distant, haunted. Finally, Sophia broke the silence. "Sir? Why me?" He turned slightly, his voice quiet but deliberate. "Because you saw me when no one else did," Sophia frowned. "I don't understand," he smiled faintly. "That's exactly why you're here." The car stopped in front of a vast skyscraper, Ethelred Holdings, the beating heart of his empire. Security guards bowed as Alfred stepped out. He didn't acknowledge them. Sophia followed, hesitant, her shoes squeaking on the marble floor. They entered a private elevator that soared silently to the top floor. As the doors opened, Sophia gasped. The office wasn't an office. It was a kingdom in glass and light. A panoramic view of Central Park stretched endlessly beneath them, the city glowing like fire beneath the storm. Alfred walked to the massive window, hands behind his back. "But tell me, Miss Jenkins," he said softly, "do you think people can still surprise you?" She hesitated. "I think most people choose not to," he nodded slowly. "That's what I used to think, too." He turned to her fully now, the CEO, the legend, the man whose decisions shaped nations. But his eyes told another story, one of exhaustion, of a soul eroded by success. "I wasn't testing that restaurant," he said. "I was testing myself," Sophia frowned. "Testing yourself?" "Yes, to see if I still believed there was decency left in the world." He walked toward his desk, opened a small wooden box, and pulled out a worn pendant. It was shaped like a delicate kiri blossom etched in gold. "This was my mother's," he said. "She was Japanese, an artist, gentle, proud, full of grace. She taught me that kindness isn't weakness. It's the only true strength." He paused, staring at the pendant. "But my father was different. A man who believed compassion made you soft. He built me into a weapon. I learned to conquer, not to care. And I did. I built everything you see." He gestured toward the glowing city. "But in the process, I forgot who I was." Sophia didn't know what to say. She just listened, the kind of listening that has no judgment, only empathy. "Tonight," he continued, "I wanted to see the world through my mother's eyes again. I wanted to see if anyone would treat me with humanity when I had nothing." He looked up at her, eyes gleaming faintly with moisture. "You were the only one who did," Sophia swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything special," Alfred smiled sadly. "You gave a dying man a reason to believe he wasn't already dead." The words hung heavy in the air. "Dying," she whispered. He turned back to the window. "My doctor says I might not see another birthday. Stress, isolation, a heart that's worked harder than it should." He laughed quietly, not with humor, but with resignation. "Funny, isn't it? You can buy every heartbeat the world offers, but not one that truly matters." Sophia stepped closer, the city lights reflecting off her tear-bright eyes. "Then don't die like this," she said softly. "Do something with the time you have left." Alfred turned to her, intrigued. "And what would that be?" She took a deep breath. "Be who your mother wanted you to be." For the first time in years, Alfred Stone had no answer. Later that night, Sophia found herself in the back seat of the Maybach again, this time heading home. Her phone buzzed. 12 missed calls from her landlord, 2 from the hospital. Her mother's treatment bill was overdue again. She sighed. Reality was cruelly fast at catching up. But before she could spiral into worry, the driver handed her an envelope. "From Mr. Stone," he said. She opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. "Miss Jenkins, decency deserves to breathe. Consider this an investment, not in charity, but in hope." And below the note, a check. For $250,000, her breath caught. It wasn't possible. No signature, no explanation. Just quiet, deliberate generosity. She clutched it to her chest, tears spilling freely. But she didn't feel relief. She felt responsibility, because somehow she knew this wasn't over. The next morning, Alfred sat in his penthouse library, staring at a portrait, a painting of a woman in traditional Kyoto dress, holding a golden blossom. His mother. For the first time in decades, he spoke to the painting. "I met someone, Mother. Someone like you." A knock interrupted his thoughts. His assistant entered. "Sir, the board meeting is in 20 minutes. Cancel it," the assistant blinked. "Cancel, sir?" "Yes," Alfred said. "I'm taking a different meeting today." He picked up his coat and cane. For a man told he might not live to see another birthday, Alfred Stone had never looked more alive. At the same time, Sophia was in her apartment kitchen, clutching the pendant she'd found tucked inside the envelope, along with the check. The same Kiri blossom symbol Alfred had shown her. She traced the design gently, unaware that, at that very moment across town, Alfred was tracing the same symbol on his desk. 2 lives, one of unimaginable wealth, one of daily struggle, now linked by a shared kindness neither could explain. That evening, Alfred made a call to his private investigator. "I need everything you can find about Sophia Jenkins. Family, history, background, education. And do it quietly?" "Yes, sir," came the reply. As the call ended, Alfred leaned back in his chair. There was something about her, something that felt like destiny trying to speak again after years of silence. He looked out the window, where the city lights burned like restless stars. "Let's see," he whispered. "If decency can still build an empire." Meanwhile, in a small hospital room across the city, Sophia's mother was awake for the first time in days. When Sophia arrived, her mother smiled weakly. "You look different," she said softly. Sophia squeezed her hand. "Maybe I just met someone who reminded me what kindness looks like." Her mother's eyes twinkled. "Then hold on to that, my girl. Life will test your kindness more than your strength." Sophia didn't know it yet, but those words would become the prophecy of everything that came next. Morning light crept into the skyline like gold spilled across glass. But inside Alfred Stone's penthouse, the air was colder than steel. On his mahogany desk lay 2 files, one marked Confidential, Jenkins, Sophia, the other marked Legacy. Both were open. Both told 2 stories, one about a young woman's struggle and one about a man's haunted past. Alfred sat there, eyes half closed, fingers pressed together. He'd spent the entire night studying Sophia's file. GPA 3.9 major, art history. Employment, Waitress, Gilded Scepter. Mother, Elaine Jenkins, ongoing medical treatment. Father, unknown. But there was something more. A small note scribbled by his investigator at the bottom of the page. Mother once taught at Kyoto Cultural Center, 1998-2001. Alfred's heart stopped for a moment. Kyoto, the same city his mother was born in. He stood, suddenly restless, pacing toward the window. Coincidence? Maybe. But Alfred didn't believe in coincidences anymore. Later that day, Sophia arrived at her new job, except it wasn't the restaurant. A black car had been waiting outside her apartment that morning, the same Maybach. The driver handed her a letter sealed with gold wax. "Report to Ethelred Holdings executive floor 9 a.m. Sophia had almost laughed. That must be a mistake. The driver didn't smile. Mr. Stone doesn't make mistakes. Now she stood in the marble hallway of the tallest building in Manhattan, the kind of place she'd only ever seen in movies. Her reflection shimmered in the polished floor as the elevator doors opened. "Good morning, Miss Jenkins," Alfred's assistant greeted her with a professional smile. "Mr. Stone will see you now." Sophia stepped into the office and froze. Alfred Stone was standing by a table filled with strange artifacts, Japanese calligraphy brushes, lacquer boxes, and a half-finished painting of a golden blossom. "Good morning," he said without turning around. "Tell me, Miss Jenkins, do you know what this is?" He pointed to a broken ceramic bowl, its cracks filled with gold. Sophia stepped closer, eyes widening. "It's kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold." Alfred turned slowly. "Exactly. It teaches that what's broken isn't ruined. It's made stronger for having been broken." He smiled faintly. "You see, my mother was a kintsugi artist. She used to say that the cracks of our soul deserve gold, not shame." Sophia's voice softened. "That's beautiful," he nodded, "and that's why you're here. I want you to help me restore something that's been broken for far too long." Sophia blinked, confused. "Restore? You mean art?" He chuckled quietly. "Something far more fragile. My company." He walked to his desk and handed her a folder. Inside were photos of factories, board meetings, luxury towers, and news clippings about lawsuits, corruption, labor scandals. Sophia's heart sank. "This is Ethelred?" "Yes," Alfred said simply. "A rotten empire built by a man who forgot his mother's lessons." He looked at her. "I want to change it, but I can't do it alone. I need someone who still believes in decency." Sophia stared at him, stunned. "Mr. Stone, I'm not an executive. I'm not even a manager. I'm just—" "You're exactly what I need," he interrupted. You see things others don't. You act when others freeze. You reminded me what humanity looks like. He walked closer, eyes steady. You'll be my personal ethics consultant. You'll sit in on board meetings, observe, and tell me the truth, especially when no one else dares to. Sophia could barely breathe. I don't know what to say, he smiled. Say yes. By noon, she was sitting in the boardroom of one of the world's most powerful companies, surrounded by men in $1,000 suits, their eyes filled with disbelief. The whispers were instant. Who's that? His new secretary? No, he said, Consultant. She looks like a college intern. Alfred entered moments later, silent authority filling the room. This is Miss Sophia Jenkins, he announced. She'll be joining us as my personal advisor on corporate integrity. Laughter rippled through the room. Quiet, cruel. Alfred didn't smile. Anyone who finds that funny may leave. Permanently. Silence. The laughter died instantly. He continued, For years, this company has been rich in profit and poor in soul. That ends today. Sophia watched as the room shifted uncomfortably. These were men used to power, not conscience. After the meeting, one of them approached her. A slick, sharp man in a navy suit. Let me guess, he said with a smirk. You served him coffee once, and now you serve him philosophy. Sophia held his gaze. No, I served him tea and humanity, he blinked, thrown off by her calm confidence. As she walked away, Alfred watched from his office window, the faintest smile on his lips. She was different, unbreakable, exactly what his empire needed. But that night, something stirred. A shadow from Alfred's past appeared in the form of a phone call. Mr. Stone, his security chief said over the line. We've received unusual inquiries about Miss Jenkins. Alfred's tone darkened. From whom? Untraceable. But, sir, they're using your mother's maiden name as a passcode. For the first time in decades, Alfred felt something rare. Fear. He ended the call and opened the box on his desk, the one marked Legacy. Inside was an old photograph. His mother holding a baby in Kyoto. But beside her, blurred at the edge of the frame, stood another child, maybe 2 or 3 years older. A daughter? No, that wasn't possible. He'd been told he was an only child, or had he? At the same time, in her small apartment, Sophia sat on her bed, the gold pendant in her palm. She'd worn it all day, unable to explain why. But tonight, as the light hit it just right, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. Faint Japanese characters engraved on the back. She squinted. 3 simple words. For my children. Plural. Her pulse quickened. Children, not child. She turned the pendant over again, heart pounding. Something inside her said she needed answers. Not tomorrow, not next week. Now. The next morning, she went back to Alfred's office early. He was already there, staring out at the skyline as if waiting for her. Sir, she said softly, holding out the pendant. You left this in my envelope. He turned slowly, eyes narrowing. That's impossible. I never gave you that, Sophia froze. But it was in the envelope. With your letter? He walked toward her, his expression unreadable. He took the pendant carefully, tracing the engraving. When he read the words, his hand trembled. For my children? He whispered. Then he looked at Sophia. Really looked, as if seeing her for the first time. Where did you get this? She stammered. It's my mother's. She said it was given to her years ago in Japan. I never knew by who. The room went silent. Time seemed to stop. Alfred's voice was barely a whisper. What was your mother's maiden name? Sophia frowned. Elaine. Elaine Akiyama. The name hit him like a thunderclap. He staggered back, eyes wide, voice breaking. That was my mother's family name. Sophia's breath caught. What are you saying? He stared at her, disbelief and awe mixing in his eyes. I'm saying, you might be more than my savior, Miss Jenkins. He took a shaky breath. You might be my sister's daughter. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap that refused to fade. Sophia stood frozen in front of Alfred Stone, the billionaire whose empire shook economies. And now, possibly, the man bound to her by blood. You can't be serious, she whispered. Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't look away. Alfred set the pendant gently on the table, his jaw tightening. I'm not sure of anything, he said quietly, except this. That pendant belonged to my mother. She wore it until the day she died. He took a deep breath. She was lost during the Kyoto earthquake in 2001. They never found her body, just fragments of her belongings. Sophia's lips parted. My mother, she was there too. She said that's when her life changed forever. The two stared at each other, a silent storm brewing between disbelief and fate. That night, Alfred called for the only man he trusted, Harrison, his lifelong legal advisor, who had known his family for 30 years. They met in the quiet of the penthouse study. The city lights blinked beyond the glass like 1,000 secrets. "Harrison," Alfred said, pacing, "I need every record from my mother's years in Japan, Kyoto specifically. Find any adoption, transfer, or missing child reports between 1999 and 2002. The older man frowned. "Are you sure you want to open that box again, Alfred? You buried that chapter for a reason?" Alfred looked toward the pendant on the desk. "Maybe I buried the wrong thing." Meanwhile, Sophia couldn't sleep. The thought of it all, the pendant, the coincidence, Alfred's reaction, it didn't feel random anymore. She dug through an old photo album her mother had kept hidden. Inside were faded pictures. Her mom smiling with students in kimonos, cherry blossoms behind her. But one photo stood out. Her mother was younger, standing beside a Japanese woman with elegant eyes and a warm, composed smile. They both held the same pendant. Sophia gasped. There were two pendants, two halves of the same gold circle. The one she had was engraved, "For my children," but the one in the photo, the other half, said something else, no matter the distance. The next morning, she marched straight into Alfred's office. He was sitting at his desk, surrounded by documents and files, scattered like pieces of a broken puzzle. "I found something," she said, breathless. He looked up, eyes tired. "So did I." They both placed photos on the table at the same time, his mother, her mother, together. Silence. Real, heavy, soul-splitting silence. Alfred's voice broke first. "She was there, my mother and your mother. They knew each other," Sophia whispered. "More than that. They cared for each other. Look at their faces." He nodded slowly. "They were hiding something." That afternoon, Alfred's investigator returned, pale, nervous, holding a file thick with documents. "Sir," he said quietly, handing it over, "you were right. There was a record. Elaine Akiyama gave birth to a baby girl in 2000. But before that," he paused, "your mother, Hana Akiyama Stone, registered 2 children on a private hospital record. Only one was publicly declared. You." Alfred's throat went dry. "And the other? Name, Sakura. Birth certificate sealed. Adopted by Elaine after the earthquake evacuation." Sophia whispered, "Sakura. That's the name my mother used to call me when I was little." The world seemed to tilt. Alfred leaned against the desk, voice trembling. "Then you are my blood, my sister's daughter, my niece." The moment shattered him. For decades, Alfred had believed his family was gone, wiped out by tragedy, buried under corporate ambition and guilt. Now that same past stood before him, alive, brave, and unknowingly saving him from his own darkness. He turned away, struggling to steady his breath. Sophia stepped closer. "Mr. Stone?" He shook his head. "Don't, not Mr. Stone." "But not any more," she hesitated. "Then, what should I call you?" He looked at her with tears in his eyes, a sight no one had ever seen. "Uncle," he whispered. The room filled with a silence that wasn't empty. It was sacred. Sophia's eyes welled. All the years she'd wondered where she came from, why her mother avoided questions about Japan. The pieces finally fit, but then reality hit, sharp, cold, corporate. She stepped back. "This changes everything. I work for you now. People will talk." Alfred smiled faintly through the ache. "Let them. Family isn't scandal, Sophia. It's the one truth this company's been missing." She nodded slowly. "Then we'll rebuild it. Together." Days passed, but word spread fast. Whispers in boardrooms, murmurs in hallways. A waitress turned consultant, now rumored to be related to the boss. It was too delicious for gossip to resist. At one board meeting, a senior partner leaned across the table, sneering. "So, is this how we promote people now, sir? Blood over merit?" Sophia's jaw tightened, but Alfred answered first. "No, we promote courage, something you wouldn't understand." The man smirked. "You're risking the company's reputation for a family fairy tale." Alfred leaned forward, eyes cold. "No, I'm saving its soul with one." The room went silent. That evening, Alfred and Sophia walked through the art gallery wing of his office, filled with Japanese calligraphy, pottery, and his mother's unfinished works. He stopped in front of one, a piece she'd titled "Two Blossoms, One Root." 2 cherry blossoms rising from the same golden stem. Sophia touched the frame, eyes soft. "She knew," Alfred nodded slowly. She always did. But fate wasn't done testing them. The next week, the media caught the story. Billionaire hides secret family connection flashed across news banners. Reporters camped outside the building. Investors panicked. Shares dipped overnight. Harrison stormed into Alfred's office. "Alfred, the board is calling for a crisis meeting. They want Sophia gone immediately." Sophia stood there, pale but composed. Alfred's eyes burned. "She's not going anywhere." Harrison sighed. "You'll lose the company." Alfred turned sharply. "Then I'll build another one," Sophia whispered. "You don't have to do this for me." He looked at her. "I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because of you." That night, Alfred released a public statement himself, a rare move for a man known for silence. "The truth is not a weakness. It's our inheritance. 25 years ago, my mother saved a child in Japan. That child grew up to save me. Her name is Sophia Jenkins, and she is family, by blood and by honor." The world went silent. Within hours, the statement went viral, not as scandal, but as redemption. Headlines changed. Billionaire finds lost niece, promises ethical overhaul. A new legacy born from gold and grace. The next morning, Sophia walked into the office, no longer a waitress, no longer just an advisor, but a woman carrying generations of survival. As she stepped out of the elevator, every eye turned. Some skeptical, some respectful. And standing by the window, Alfred waited, smiling softly. "Welcome home," he said. Sophia smiled back, eyes bright with tears. "Thank you." "Uncle Alfred." He extended a small box toward her. Inside, the other half of the pendant. Together, they clicked the two pieces into one. The engraving now read, "For my children, no matter the distance." That evening, Alfred visited his mother's grave in the quiet hills outside the city. Sophia stood beside him, holding the pendant between them. He whispered, "You were right, Mother. What's broken can shine again. If we fill the cracks with gold." Sophia added softly, "And love." They both smiled through the tears. For the first time in years, Alfred Stone didn't feel alone, and Sophia Jenkins, the girl who had once served tea to strangers, now stood where destiny had always meant her to be. When the world finally knew the truth, Alfred Stone thought the war was over. But he was wrong. The hardest battle wasn't for his company. It was for his soul. The marble boardroom of Ethel Holdings had never been this silent. Outside, the tall windows, Manhattan stretched like a city holding its breath. Inside, 12 board members sat in cold judgment. Cameras from the financial press lined the back wall. The chairman, a silver-haired man with a shark's grin, leaned forward. "Mr. Stone," he said smoothly, "you've been a visionary for decades. But now, the markets are nervous. Investors don't understand this tough family drama." A low chuckle rippled through the room. Alfred didn't flinch. He looked at them, the same men who had once bowed to his every decision, and saw nothing but fear hiding behind expensive suits. "Maybe it's time," Alfred said calmly, "that we stop building for markets and start building for meaning." The chairman raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting emotional leadership, Mr. Stone. This isn't charity, it's business." Sophia, sitting quietly beside Alfred, spoke up. Her voice was steady, clear. "With all due respect, sir, business is emotional. People don't invest in numbers, they invest in trust. And right now, trust is worth more than your profit margins." The chairman laughed softly. "A waitress lectures the board. How poetic." Sophia met his gaze without blinking. "Funny," she said. "I was serving your table 3 months ago. You didn't seem to mind then." The room went dead silent. Alfred slowly stood. His voice, though quiet, carried the authority of a lifetime. For years, this company stood for control, perfection, profit. But perfection kills progress. My mother taught me something your balance sheets never will, that what's broken can be made beautiful again, if you care enough to mend it. He turned to the cameras. "You want a headline? Here it is. Ethel Holdings will fund education programs in Kyoto for artists, engineers, and dreamers, the kind my mother once taught. Half of my personal wealth will go into the Kintsugi Foundation, a name that means golden repair. Because the world doesn't need more billionaires, it needs more humanity." Every camera flash went off like lightning. Some executives looked horrified, others inspired. Sophia watched him, a mix of pride and disbelief. This wasn't just a businessman talking. It was a man reborn. Hours later, Alfred stood alone on the building's rooftop, wind tugging at his coat. He'd done it. He'd risked everything, but his heart wasn't steady. He reached for his chest, his breathing shallow. Years of buried stress, loneliness, and late-night whiskey had finally caught up. He sank to his knees. The city blurred below him. His vision dimmed. "Mr. Stone!" Sophia's voice. Distant, rushing footsteps. She caught him before he fell completely. "Uncle Alfred, stay with me!" His lips curved faintly. "Still calling me Mr. Stone," he whispered weakly. "That's progress." Tears streaked her face. "Don't joke, please." He reached for her hand, trembling. "If I go, promise me you'll finish it. The foundation, the schools, everything." Her voice broke. "Don't say that." But his eyes, steady, calm, full of something she hadn't seen before. Peace. "I wasted my life hiding what I was. You reminded me who I am." And with a final breath he whispered, "Arigato, Sakura." "Thank you, Sakura." His hand went still. Rain fell over the hill where the cherry blossoms swayed gently in the wind. The city's elite stood under umbrellas, whispering as the casket was lowered. But Sophia stood apart. No umbrella, no fear. Just the pendant hanging from her neck, the two halves joined together. As the rain struck her face, she looked up, toward the gray sky where the wind carried fallen petals, and whispered softly, "I'll finish what you started." A year later. Kyoto. Inside a bright courtyard lined with gold-trimmed pottery and art. A group of children gathered around a large sign that read, "The Kintsugi Academy, founded by Alfred Stone and Sophia Jenkins." Sophia, now dressed in a tailored white suit, greeted a group of visitors from the U.S. Her tone carried quiet strength, no longer nervous, no longer invisible. "We teach them the way my uncle was taught," she explained, "not to hide what's broken, but to fill it with gold." The children were laughing nearby, learning both art and business, the perfect fusion Alfred dreamed of. One of the guests, a journalist, lowered his camera. "You really think one man's regret can change the world?" Sophia smiled faintly. "No, but one act of kindness can start a chain that never ends." Later that evening, in her small Kyoto apartment, Sophia opened an envelope marked to be opened 1 year after my passing. Inside was a letter written in Alfred's steady hand. "My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, then I've gone where my mother waits. You've done more for me than anyone else ever did, not because you share my blood, but because you shared my heart. Remember, the world will always chase what shines, but true gold is quiet. It doesn't need to shout, it just glows. Carry that glow, Sakura, and when you doubt yourself, look at the pendant. It will remind you that even the smallest act, a greeting, a smile, a word in someone's language, can change a life. Yours, Alfred." She pressed the letter to her chest, tears falling silently, not from sadness, but from gratitude. Years later, the Kintsugi Foundation became a global movement, sponsoring thousands of students in art, ethics, and humanitarian business. Sophia never sought fame. She only told one story, the one about the old man nobody helped, until someone spoke his language. During a televised award ceremony, she stood before a sea of lights and cameras. When asked what inspired her most, she smiled softly and said, "A billionaire once walked into my restaurant disguised as a poor man. Everyone turned him away. I served him tea. I didn't know he'd end up changing my life, or that he'd remind the world what kindness looks like when no one's watching." The crowd rose in applause. Night, Kyoto. A peaceful street lined with lanterns. Sophia walked quietly along the riverbank, the same pendant glimmering under the moonlight. She paused as a small boy tripped ahead, spilling his groceries. She rushed over, helped him gather them, smiled, and said, softly, in Japanese, "Daijoubu? Are you okay?" The boy smiled shyly and nodded. As Sophia walked away, the camera rose above the city, catching her voice echoing softly. Kindness is the only language that never needs translation. Dedicated to everyone who chooses empathy when the world chooses indifference. They say money speaks every language, but that night, in a corner of New York, it wasn't money that spoke. It was kindness, spoken softly in a language the world had forgotten. Tokyo, spring. Cherry blossoms fall over the neon skyline, turning steel and glass into something human again. A private limousine pulled up outside the headquarters of the Kintsugi Global Trust, one of the largest philanthropic organizations on Earth. As the doors opened, cameras flashed, journalists shouted, and a familiar figure stepped out. Sophia Jenkins Stone, now in her early 30s, graceful yet grounded, her eyes still carrying that same quiet warmth from the restaurant years ago. She smiled, bowed slightly, and waved to the crowd. Her assistant leaned in. "Ms. Stone, you're due on stage in 5 minutes. Thank you." "Yuki," she said softly, her voice fluent in Japanese now. As she walked toward the glass doors, her pen inside, the world's most powerful leaders sat waiting. The annual Ethics and Innovation Summit, a place where CEOs, artists, and thinkers gathered to redefine what success meant. Sophia stood at the podium. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the Foundation's logo. "Mend the world with gold," she began. Slow, deliberate, every word carrying weight. "When I was 24, I worked as a waitress in New York. One night, an old man walked into the restaurant where I worked. Everyone turned him away, mocked him, ignored him. They saw his clothes, but not his soul. The room was silent. I was the only one who spoke to him, not because I knew who he was, but because he looked like he needed to be seen." She paused, her eyes shimmering. That man was Alfred Stone, the billionaire who built empires, and the man who reminded me that the truest currency is compassion. Soft murmurs filled the room. She continued, "He taught me something the world often forgets, that the richest people aren't the ones who have the most. They're the ones who give the most meaning to what they already have." Dant gleamed, the golden kiri blossom, half hers, half Alfred's. After her speech, Sophia returned to her office overlooking Tokyo Bay. The desk was simple, no gold, no crystal, just clean wood, and a framed photograph of Alfred smiling beside her on the Kintsugi Academy's opening day. As she poured tea, her assistant Yuki entered. "Ma'am, this just arrived from New York. An old safe deposit box from Mr. Stone's estate. The lawyer said it was labeled, 'To be opened after 10 years'. Sophia's breath caught. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a small leather notebook and a key. On the first page, in Alfred's familiar handwriting, "For my last unfinished project." The key led her back to New York, the same city where it all began. She stood once again before the Gilded Scepter, the restaurant that had ignored him, mocked him, and unknowingly started it all. It was now abandoned, dust-covered, silent. She unlocked the doors. The air smelled faintly of old wine and lost time. As she walked through, memories flooded back, and Charles's sneer, the manager's indifference, the whispering guests, and one fragile old man sitting quietly, waiting for a glass of water that never came. She stood in that same corner, table 19, and whispered softly, "Sumimasen." "Alfred-san." "I'm sorry." "Mr. Alfred." Then she smiled. "This place won't die as a monument to arrogance. It will live again, as a lesson." Months later, the Gilded Scepter reopened, but not as a luxury restaurant. Its sign now read, "The Golden Table, a kitchen for all." It was a community center, part restaurant, part training academy, where young chefs from poor families could learn culinary arts for free. At the center stood table 19, preserved in glass with a plaque that read, "Here sat a man no one helped." Until someone did. Every year, thousands visited, billionaires, students, artists, wanderers, all reminded that greatness begins with empathy. Late one evening, as Sophia watched the city lights, her phone buzzed. It was a video call from Kyoto, her foundation's main campus. The screen lit up with dozens of children in uniform, bowing and shouting in unison, "Arigato, Sophia-san." She smiled, wiping a tear. Behind them, the cherry trees bloomed, and beneath those trees stood a new bronze statue, Alfred Stone in his humble disguise, holding out a single cup of tea. The inscription below it read, "Compassion doesn't need wealth, it needs courage." That night, Sophia sat by her window, looking out at the same moon her uncle once watched from his penthouse. She opened the old notebook again, this time near the back, where one final page waited. It was a letter, written in Alfred's rough but elegant handwriting. "Sophia, you'll build things greater than I ever did, not towers of steel, but bridges of kindness. If the world ever forgets me, let it. But don't let it forget what you did that night, the night you greeted a stranger in his mother's language. That was the real inheritance, the gold I never had the courage to spend." Tears fell onto the page, blurring the ink. Sophia whispered softly in Japanese, "Oji-san, Watashi wa anata ni kansha shimasu. Uncle, I am grateful to you. He had everything, power, money, empires. Yet, in the end, what saved him wasn't a fortune, but a word, a single greeting, spoken from the heart, in the language his mother once whispered to him. No one helped the Japanese billionaire, until the waitress greeted him in Japanese, and in that moment, the richest man in the world finally learned what true wealth really means.